A young whale lay stranded on the beach, left to die while rescue teams refused to act. Too big, they said. But nature had other plans, and its unlikely hero wasn't human. One dolphin, once trained in captivity, returned with a wild pod and led a rescue no one thought possible. But just wait until you learn who he really was, and why this true story left millions in tears as justice rose from the waves. At dawn, the waves along the coast of Mendocino were supposed to be calm, rising and falling in a steady, sleepy rhythm. But something was off. Emma Mace, a 73-year-old former marine biologist turned part-time fisherwoman, was out with her teenage grandson, Jake. The two of them had spent countless mornings like this, quietly casting nets from the old wooden pier while sipping coffee from thermoses. The sea was usually their sanctuary, but this morning the ocean didn't breathe right. As the sun lifted its gold-stained edge above the horizon, Jake pointed out across the shallows. "Grandma, what is that?" His voice trembled, not from fear, from something deeper, uncertainty. Emma adjusted her glasses, squinted into the light, and her heart dropped. It wasn't driftwood. It wasn't a sandbar. It was moving. Barely. A massive, dark shape, the unmistakable silhouette of a young sperm whale, lay stranded on the wet sand, its body half-curled and motionless, except for the heaving of its sides. Its blowhole fluttered with effort, and its rough gray skin was drying fast, already cracked by the early sun. The tide had pulled back, leaving it behind. Emma didn't speak for several seconds. When she did, it wasn't to Jake. "Oh no," she whispered, stepping forward with urgency. "That storm last night must have disoriented him." Years of research, study, and fieldwork came flooding back. Emma had seen this before, and she knew the clock was already ticking. Without wasting time, she called the Coast Guard on her cell. Her voice was calm, but pressed with quiet panic. "We have a stranded juvenile sperm whale on the northern shoreline," she said, "alive, but he won't last long." The response on the other end was robotic, procedural, and then hesitation. Too far. Too heavy. No crane ready. They wouldn't make it in time. Emma stared at her phone as the line went dead. She could have cursed, but instead, she slipped off her shoes, rolled up her jeans, and turned to Jake. "I'm staying," she said softly. "He's not going to die alone." Without needing more words, Jake grabbed the nearest bucket from the boat and ran to the shoreline. He sprinted between ocean and whale, dumping salt water onto the whale's flanks, over and over. The sand stung his bare feet. His arms ached. He didn't stop. Emma knelt beside the creature's enormous eye. It blinked slowly. She placed her hand near its jaw, not touching, just close enough to feel the warmth. "You are not alone," she whispered. For nearly an hour they fought the sun with water and the silence with hope. There was no help coming, just the two of them and the stranded giant. And then something changed. The wind shifted. Emma noticed first. The breeze now pulled inland, no longer pushing against the tide. She turned her gaze to the open sea. At first, she thought it was her eyes playing tricks. 2 fins cutting through the surface, barely noticeable. Then 3 more. Fast, synchronized. A pod of dolphins. They were headed straight V-sharp for the shallows. Emma stood, shading her face. Her scientist's brain struggled to make sense of it, but her instincts, the ones she'd trusted her whole life, whispered something different. This wasn't a coincidence. This was something else. The dolphins began to circle, keeping their distance from the whale at first. Then one of them broke formation and approached. It lingered near the massive creature's head, pausing, almost hovering in place. It let out a series of sharp clicks and whistles, echolocation pulses, as if it were checking in, communicating. Emma held her breath. Jake whispered, "Are they here for him?" Emma couldn't answer. Not yet, but deep down something told her they were. The whale still wasn't moving. Its massive form remained slumped in the shallows, breath low and ragged. Every few seconds its body shuddered, not from strength, but from exhaustion. It looked like he might not make it. And then the dolphins changed. They no longer circled aimlessly. Their formation tightened. They began to act with purpose, moving closer, faster, more deliberately. They didn't seem frantic. They seemed focused. Then came the sounds. Sharp pulses, chirps, echoes layered atop one another, unlike anything Emma had heard before in her decades studying marine life. These weren't warning calls or playful chatter. This was communication, intentional, rhythmic, complex. And then it happened. One of the dolphins swam directly up to the whale's side, a sleek, gray female marked by a jagged scar near her dorsal fin. She paused for only a second, then pressed her snout firmly against the whale's flipper. It wasn't aggressive. It was deliberate, urging. A second dolphin joined, then a third. Each one nudged the whale gently, but with growing intensity. Not just once, but again and again, encouraging, prodding, rallying. It was as if they were saying, "Wake up, you're not finished yet." The whale stirred. First, a slow twitch of the tail, then a faint lift of his head. Emma inhaled sharply as the massive creature released a deep, resonant sound, like a distant drum echoing through the sand and water. It wasn't loud, but it was full of life. It was the sound of refusal. And then movement. With monumental effort, the whale began to shift his weight, flinching against the friction of the sand. The dolphins responded instantly. As if trained for this very moment, they took position around him. Two at his sides, one near the head, another slipping beneath the enormous belly like a stabilizing keel. They pushed. With precision that defied logic, the dolphins began to guide him. Not randomly, not chaotically, strategically. Emma and Jake stood frozen at the edge of the water, feet sunk into the cool sand. They had forgotten everything. The phones in their pockets, the ache in their legs, even the rising tide behind them. What they were witnessing wasn't instinct. It was something far greater. This was a rescue. The pod moved like a unit, coordinated, powerful, determined. The whale's body inched forward, then slid another few feet with the pull of the rising water. But at the edge of the sandbar, he faltered. His body tilted dangerously. A wrong angle here, and he'd collapse again, maybe for good. One dolphin surged beneath him, lifting just enough to steady his weight. The others shifted position, their bodies creating turbulence and lift. Together, they generated a swirl, a gentle vortex, around the whale's tail and flank, using the current itself to help pull him forward. It was out on the edge of possibility. And then they vanished. The dolphins dove below the surface. 1 second, 2, 5, 10 seconds passed. Nothing. 15. Stillness. And just as doubt began to rise in Emma's chest, it came. A vertical explosion of white spray far beyond the reef. A towering jet of water burst into the sky, glittering in the early sun. A blowhole exhale. The whale had reached open water. He was alive. He had made it back. Emma let out a sound between a laugh and a sob, clutching Jake's arm without a word. On that quiet beach, for the first time in a long time, they saw something that reminded them of what the world still had to offer. Not science, not survival, but solidarity. Emma was speechless. She'd seen many things in her life, but nothing like this. That evening, she sent a brief message and video to a local news outlet. Within hours, the story went viral. Millions watched in awe as dolphins helped a stranded whale return to the sea. The footage spread like wildfire. People cried. Commenters called it a miracle. Even seasoned marine biologists were stunned. But 2 days later, the story took an unexpected turn. Emma was contacted by scientists from the San Diego Marine Institute. They'd analyzed the footage closely and noticed something unusual. One of the dolphins had a faint tag. His name was Sirius. He wasn't wild. Sirius had been raised in a cognitive research program designed to teach marine mammals empathy, even across species. He was released a year ago. No one expected to see him again. Not only had he survived, he had led a rescue. And the next morning, Sirius returned alone. Emma and Jake were there. The dolphin swam close to shore, paused, and gently bowed his head towards them. Then, without a sound, he turned and vanished into the deep. Emma stood still, her eyes full, and for the first time in years she cried, not out of sadness, but from the quiet knowledge that in the vastness of the ocean kindness still existed, and it had a name.